Actually, during that time, I was very, very angry because I was learning about the history of what happened to us. And that's what Roots did to me. It brought a lot of those feelings out of me that I didn't know that they were there. And I became very disturbed by it. And I became very angry, and I started to retaliate in school. And it took my mother to come to me and tell me, it's a history, it's something that you should never forget, but you can rise above it and make an impact and make a change and make people aware of what, some of the pain that we have endured, and make sure that, your kids or no one else surrounding you or anybody that you may have influence doesn't have to go through that type of pain. But at first, I was very disturbed by it, and I retaliated.
Michael Jordan cared way more about the grind than being buddies with anyone. Over 15 seasons, he snagged 6 titles and 5 MVP awards, building a reputation for absolutely dismantling anyone who tried to step to him on the hardwood. Getting a nod of approval from his airness wasn't exactly a walk in the park. If he felt you went offside, he'd keep that grudge on ice forever. We aren't talking about a little chirping or standard beefs. Jordan was facing down Hall of Famers and top-tier grinders every single night. Most of the lads earned his regard even after taking a loss, but a handful, not a chance. Some guys played the game in a way Jordan figured was garbage, while others started beaking off before they'd actually done anything. A few embarrassed themselves when the heat was on, and for some, it got personal way before the final siren. Over the years, Jordan hasn't been shy in interviews and docs about the players who really got under his skin. It wasn't that they bested him, it was how they carried themselves their compete level, or how they folded like a cheap tent when it counted. I honestly don't have any regrets. I am the type of guy who figures as soon as you look back at your past and find something you want to tweak, well, everything else has to shift too. When MJ says he never respected a guy, he isn't just being emotional. That is a memory. That is history. And the proof is right there on the tape. Here are the 5 players Jordan never rated and exactly why. Before we dive in, do us a solid and smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you catch the next deep dive. The beef between Jordan and Isiah Thomas is easily the frostiest relationship of his career, going way past standard competition. Jordan came into the league in 1984 and was a superstar right out of the gate. Thomas was already running the show for the Detroit Pistons and was one of the sharpest point guards around. At the start, they kept it professional, but that shifted once Detroit became the massive wall blocking Jordan from the promised land. Between 1988 and 1990, the Pistons booted the Bulls from the playoffs 3 years running. Those losses defined Jordan's early days. Detroit's strategy, the infamous Jordan rules, was built on shutting him down with heavy hitting. We're talking double teams, hard hacks, and non-stop contact. Jordan accepted that playoff ball was a grind, but he reckoned Detroit crossed the line from tough defense into straight-up assault. Years later, in The Last Dance, Jordan opened up about it. He said the Pistons were headhunting, trying to take you out. We had a shot to beat them. We just didn't push back. We got right to the edge of that mountain. We almost peeked over the top, and I was just gutted, absolutely crushed. I was weeping on the bus ride. My old man came home and told me, look, it is just one match. Shake it off. Come back next year. He never pinned Thomas as the hatchet man, but he always saw him as the captain allowing that nonsense to fly. In Jordan's books, the leader takes the heat. The turning point hit during the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals. Chicago finally dusted Detroit, sweeping them in 4 straight. As the final seconds ticked away in Game 4, Isiah Thomas and a bunch of the Pistons marched off the floor without so much as a handshake. Jordan caught that right away. He later said the Pistons showed absolutely zero class. That was the moment the rivalry totally snapped. To Jordan, how you take a loss is just as important as how you win. He'd taken physical beatings from Detroit for years. When the Pistons wouldn't own up to the defeat, Jordan saw it as proof of everything he despised about their whole operation. Off the court, the divide just got wider. People often bring up a Nike trip back in '85 where Jordan felt Isiah was trying to freeze him out. Thomas later claimed it wasn't on purpose, but Jordan never bought what he was selling. Whether it was a mix-up or just bad blood, it ramped up the tension. The whole thing bubbled up again in '92 with the Dream Team. Isiah Thomas got left at home even though his stats said he belonged there. Jordan never flat out admitted to blocking Isiah, but plenty of the boys, Scottie Pippen included, made it clear they wouldn't have suited up if Thomas was on the squad. Did you want him there? Well, I can't speak for Michael, but no, I definitely didn't want him on the team. Jordan never argued with those comments. In The Last Dance, when asked if Isiah deserved a jersey, Jordan just paused, smirked, and passed on the question. On paper, Jordan absolutely owned Detroit. Between 88 and 90, he was putting up over 32 points a night in the playoffs against the Pistons, but Chicago dropped all 3 series. Jordan respected a win, sure, but he had no time for how Detroit went about getting theirs. That difference meant everything to him. After hanging up his sneakers, Isiah tried to patch things up a few times. He publicly praised Jordan and said he felt bad about how it ended. Jordan never gave him the time of day. Whenever people ask about the rivals he rated, Jordan always lists Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and the like. Isiah's name is conspicuously missing. This feud never got sorted because Jordan never felt it was worth fixing. In his eyes, the Pistons roughhousing, the walk-off in '91, and years of bad vibes defined the whole deal. Jordan moved on without looking back. Michael Jordan didn't treat Isiah Thomas like a rival who earned his stripes. He treated him like a guy who stepped over the line, and Jordan never forgot or forgave that. Now, Bill Laimbeer's spot in Michael Jordan's career is defined less by what is said and more by the silence. Jordan has always been candid about the competition he respected. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Clyde Drexler, even defenders who gave him a hard time. Laimbeer's name never comes up in that chat. Eventually leaving him out said it all. When Jordan joined the league in '84, Laimbeer was already a main cog for the Detroit Pistons. He wasn't the franchise superstar, but he was the anchor of Detroit's identity. As the Pistons' starting big man through the late '80s, Laimbeer grabbed boards, spaced the floor, set bone-crushing picks, and anchored a defense built on heavy pressure. Jordan never complained about a tough physical game. Actually, he packed on serious muscle in the late '80s just to handle the playoff grind. What ticked him off wasn't the toughness, it was the intention behind it. Jordan always said Detroit was out to target the player, not the ball. Inside that system, Laimbeer was the poster boy. During those Bulls-Pistons playoff tilts from '88 to '90, Laimbeer was usually the one in the way when Jordan drove the lane. Detroit would collapse the paint, and Laimbeer was often the last body sliding over. The hits were heavy late and happened constantly across series. These weren't just one-offs, this was the Detroit blueprint. Jordan later mentioned the Pistons tried to physically break you down. Even if he didn't call Laimbeer out by name, every time the whole league knew the score, players, coaches, and the media all pegged Laimbeer as Detroit's enforcer. He was the guy most willing to take the heat to keep the Pistons sharp. What set Laimbeer apart from other grinders was that he totally owned that role. He admitted in interviews that his job was to make life miserable for the other team. That honesty cemented his rep, but it didn't win him any points with Jordan. Mike respected defenders who checked him with smart positioning and timing. He didn't have that same regard for guys who relied on borderline fouls and agitation to be effective. The scoreboard favored Detroit early on, though. The Pistons bounced the Bulls in the '88 semifinals and the conference finals in '89 and '90. Jordan averaged over 30 a game in those battles, often carrying the whole offense on his back. But getting buckets meant taking a beating, and Laimbeer was always dishing it out. Then there was the way Laimbeer played offense. Around the league, he had a reputation for dishing out hard hits on defense, but diving like a soccer player on offense. Jordan saw that mix as playing games, not being tough. While Jordan never publicly called Laimbeer out by name, his general chirping about flopping in that era lined up perfectly with Laimbeer's antics. By the time Chicago finally broke the curse in '91, Jordan's mind was already made up. When the Pistons walked off without shaking hands, Laimbeer being part of it didn't change a thing. It just proved what Jordan already thought about Detroit's character. After the rivalry cooled off, Jordan never changed his tune. In later interviews, he gave props to plenty of old opponents. Laimbeer never got a mention. Jordan didn't credit him as a lockdown defender or a smart player. He simply left him out of the story. On paper, Laimbeer had a solid run. 4 All-Star nods, 2 rings, and a key piece of a juggernaut defense. But Jordan didn't measure respect by hardware. He measured it by how a guy battled when the game was on the line. The way Jordan saw it, Bill Laimbeer didn't force him to level up his skills. He was just part of a system Jordan was determined to smash, and once he did, he never felt the need to bring him up again. Reggie Miller's spot on Jordan's list is a bit of an odd one. Jordan didn't have a problem with Miller's skill. He had a problem with his attitude, specifically Miller acting like he was Jordan's equal before Jordan thought he'd actually earned that right. The dynamic between the two grew as the Bulls and Pacers started meeting constantly in the playoffs. Miller was the main man in Indiana, a top-tier shooter who never stopped moving off the ball and easily one of the most self-assured characters in the game. That belief in himself went beyond just playing basketball. Miller was vocal about going up against Jordan, even calling their battles a rivalry. Jordan took note, and on the hardwood, he dealt with Miller himself. Chicago and Indiana faced off 4 times in the postseason, while Jordan was active 1989 and 1991 in the opening round, 1995 in the East semis, and 1998 in the conference finals. The Bulls took 3 of those 4 series. The only time Indiana came out on top was 1995, right when Jordan had just come back from baseball and was still getting his legs under him. When MJ was at 100%, there was no question who won. The real showdown happened in 1998. The Pacers pushed Chicago to a full 7 games in one of the hardest series Jordan ever played. Miller hit massive shots and got the crowd going, but when it came down to the wire, Jordan took over. In Game 7, Jordan dropped 28 points, controlled the pace, and shut the door on Indiana's best shot at the finals. Once it was over, Jordan didn't give Miller any credit. He brushed off the idea of a rivalry entirely. During The Last Dance when Jordan watched clips of Miller calling himself a rival, he just laughed and said Reggie Miller was no rival of mine. He wasn't being defensive or emotional about it. He was just stating a fact. In Jordan's eyes, a rivalry means both sides win some of the time. He didn't see that happening here, and if you look at the stats, the numbers back him up. Jordan beat Miller in every category that mattered: scoring efficiency and two-way play. Miller was a great shooter and hit big shots, but he never dominated a series like Mike did. Jordan respected results under pressure, not titles people gave themselves. Their playing styles also played a part in how Jordan saw him. Miller was famous for drawing fouls by flailing around, running off screens hard, and selling contact to get the refs to blow the whistle. It was all legal and it worked, but Jordan didn't respect it. He believed in beating a guy straight up with isolation, plays footwork, and strength, not by working the officials. When Miller went too far with his trash talk, Jordan didn't chirp back. He answered with baskets. Teammates and opponents remember times when Jordan took Miller's comments personal, guarding him tighter and going at him harder on offense. Jordan's point was always simple: control the game and shut the talk down. Even years after retiring, his attitude never changed. Jordan has spoken highly of plenty of guys he played against, especially ones who gave him a physical challenge or beat him when it counted. But with Miller, he never gave that praise. He never looked back fondly on their battles or changed his tune. Miller, on the other hand, has always given it up to Jordan. He's called him the GOAT and admitted how tough it was to play against him. That respect was a one-way street. It wasn't that Jordan hated Reggie. He just didn't fear him. He never felt threatened. He simply didn't accept that they were on the same level. For Michael, respect came from winning series, owning the moment, and dominating when everything was on the line. Looking back at his career, Reggie Miller didn't make the cut. Not because he lacked talent, but because he never got the wins to prove it. People ask why I couldn't stand Reggie Miller. Here is the answer. Gary Payton is one of the few guys who actually said he had MJ figured out, and that claim more than anything defined how Jordan looked at him. And then when I slow him down, don't worry about me, I'll figure it out. So when he did that, I slowed him down. You know what I'm saying? And that's all we had. We knew we couldn't stop him. We just had to slow him down. We had to force other guys to make plays, and that's when Pippen and Kukoc stepped up, but I slowed him down and we took the next 2 games. This cemented his reputation as one of the best perimeter defenders around. By the mid-90s, he was a 9-time All-Defensive pick, a Defensive Player of the Year, and the heart and soul of the Seattle Supersonics. He never stopped talking, picked up ball handlers full court, and prided himself on grinding guys down mentally just as much as physically. Jordan heard the noise but ignored it until Payton took it public. The breaking point was the 1996 NBA Finals. Chicago took the series in 6, but after Seattle switched up their defense in games 4 and 5, Payton told the press he had changed the matchup and made life hard for Jordan. He said he should have been on him from game 1 and hinted the series might have ended differently. Jordan didn't like that spin one bit. Sure, his numbers dropped a bit once Payton started guarding him, but context is key. By the time Payton took the assignment, the Bulls were already up 3-0. Chicago took their foot off the gas. Scottie Pippen had a bad back, so Jordan switched to more of a distributor role. Even then, Jordan averaged 27 points, 5 boards, and 4 assists for the series and sealed the title in Game 6. Jordan finally addressed Payton's comments years later in the documentary. When asked about Payton thinking he did a good job defending him, Jordan just smirked and said, "I had no problem with the glove. It wasn't defensive. It was a total brush off." For Jordan, defense wasn't about annoying someone for a few quarters. It was about winning. Chicago got the ring. Jordan got Finals MVP. End of story. It was also a clash of philosophies. Payton loved to talk chirp constantly and use his confidence to get under people's skin. Jordan stayed quiet. He believed real defense showed up in the final score, not in quotes. When Payton talked about moral victories, Jordan just heard noise. History was on Jordan's side too. Jordan and Payton played each other plenty in the regular season and playoffs. Jordan always put up numbers against Seattle and never lost a postseason series to the Sonics. Payton could apply pressure, but he couldn't stop Jordan from taking over the game. After retiring, Payton kept talking about that matchup, often pointing to those finals games as proof of his skills. Jordan never really argued back. He didn't have to. The record spoke for itself. Jordan has praised great defenders before. He's talked up guys who challenged him quietly and consistently, but Payton never got that nod. Jordan never gave him credit for changing his game or making things harder. That silence said it all. Jordan didn't deny Payton had a great resume. He just rejected the idea that Payton changed anything that actually mattered. Titles, MVPs, and wins were Jordan's measuring stick. Gary Payton thought making Jordan work for it was enough. Jordan believed you only get credit if you win. That difference is why Payton's confidence never earned him Jordan's respect. Jerry Stackhouse isn't seen as a great rival of Michael Jordan, and that is exactly why he is on this list. Jordan didn't see Stackhouse as a threat or a peer. What annoyed him was that Stackhouse tried to act like one being vocal without the game to back it up when it counted. Stackhouse came into the league in 1995 with massive hype. He was the number 3 pick, a high-flying scorer, and one of the most athletic wing players of his time. Early on, he was very open about his confidence, claiming he could score on anybody, Jordan included. Jordan heard about it. They played each other a lot in the late 90s and early 2000s while Jordan was still the standard and Stackhouse was moving around from Philly to Detroit and then Washington. Stackhouse made his name by putting up numbers and playing without fear. He attacked the rim and didn't back down from the big names, but Jordan judged players on results, not talk. On the court, the difference was clear. Jordan beat Stackhouse consistently in one-on-one matchups, often guarding him late in games. When Stackhouse tried to take charge, Jordan responded by controlling the game, picking his spots, and forcing Stackhouse into taking bad shots. The biggest moment happened in 2002 when Stackhouse was with the Pistons and Jordan was with the Wizards. Stackhouse told the media Jordan wasn't the same player anymore and implied he could go after him on defense. Jordan answered on the court by dropping 51 points on Detroit, one of his best games as a Wizard. After the buzzer, Jordan didn't celebrate. He just said, "I took it personally." That famous line summed it up. Jordan didn't mind a challenge. He minded challenges that hadn't been earned yet. Stackhouse's issue wasn't confidence. Jordan liked confidence if you could back it up. The problem was, Stackhouse talked like he had already made it, while his career lacked the consistency and playoff impact that Jordan respected. Statistically, Stackhouse had some good scoring years. He was putting up more than 20 points a night consistently, even topping the league for total scoring back in 2001. But he needed the ball constantly to do it. His efficiency was average at best, and it rarely translated to wins. MJ saw right through those empty stats.